to decide to do his thing. Hello, everybody. Daniel from Whiskey Throttle here. I have a guest, as you can see, which I'll introduce in a few minutes. As some of you know, in October last year, I went to Scotland for a whiskey tour. And one of the places that most impressed me was when I went to Campbeltown. The only thing that made me sad is that we were so rushed going through there, we couldn't spend more time. Watch the emails start popping in just to make a noise while I'm talking live. Because it was one of the most interesting places to walk through and see, and not just the whiskey, but how they do the whiskey and stick with it. So right now I have with me Ronan Currie, and we'll let you introduce yourself and how you work for Campbeltown.
My name is Ronan Currie. I do sales and marketing for Glengyle Distillery and Springbank Distillery. Usually just cover sort of Northern Europe and sort of Asia, but managed to find myself in a quick trip out to Edmonton. Worked in for the sort of whole company for about 3 years now. Started off at Cadenheads, depending on how you say it, and then moved from there into Springbank and Glengyle.
Okay, and you've been, you just said 3 years you've been there.
Yeah.
And you're filling in now for Melanie.
Yeah.
She couldn't make it. And we hope she's doing better. I think she got a little sick. So Melanie, she's the one that actually took us through our tour. Yesterday you were at the Keg and Cork and you did a tasting. One of the questions I asked you is if you had the Excel spreadsheet that Melanie had on her phone. But you apparently know where everything is.
I've not seen this spreadsheet. I would hope that if we went into that same warehouse, I'd be able to pick out the same whiskies.
Do you? That's good.
It's the sort of thing you just go in and you wing it. And
she knew she was going right through and finding some of this amazing barrels and casks for it. So, Amy's in the house. I'm going to check in the chat. There's Whiskey in the Six, who's from Montreal. We have My Bourbon Journey. You were talking with him? Yeah,
it was Whiskey in the Six was asking if I was coming out east.
Oh, you don't want to go out there. Winter's worse in Toronto.
Yeah, well, I'll avoid that.
Yeah. No, he's not coming. He's not coming to see you, Rob. No, Rob's a good guy. Whiskey Pilgrim, he does stuff in somewhere you'll be before you come here. I always forget if it's Norway or where it's at. Sorry, Whiskey Pilgrim. Montreal, Whiskey in this. No, you're in Toronto. Jason Fisk is here. Louis, how you doing? Rooney is a phenomenal guy. Lives on the Faroe Islands.
All right.
Right? You know where that is? Right above Scotland. Right above Scotland. In the middle of the freaking ocean. I'm going to tell you, Rooney, those are real Vikings living on that island.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is phenomenal. And he has a huge whiskey collection, and I think he has quite a bit of Springbank. So, Macallan Fine and Rare, who is in Germany, I believe, or Austria. I get all mixed up here when I'm doing the show. And Amy is is a big fan. Her and her husband George. Amy will promote people to hit the like button lots of times. So, one of the things that I'd like to ask about is breakdown for me, because I have not been really a big Springbank fanboy. A lot of people are, and I'm like, why? Why? Because maybe I get sucked in by the marketing of other companies more and so forth, right? So on that tour, that's one of the things I appreciated is
your lack of marketing,
and the focus more on staying true to how you make the product.
Yeah.
So explain a little bit how you're, I guess, the philosophy of Springbank or Campbeltown is.
Yeah, so it sort of goes from, so the overall company is J&A Mitchell, and that's because it was originally the Mitchell family that started the distillery back in 1828, and it's now the great grandson, Mr. Headley Wright's the current owner, and we've continued on a philosophy of sort of making whiskey for the benefit of people within Campbeltown. With J&A Mitchell, we have Springbank Distillery, Glengyle Distillery, and then William Cadenheads as well, and we're all based in Campbeltown. The idea of the ethos, so the mentality of the company is sort of to try and employ as many people as possible. It's quite an odd sort of ethos that's in the whiskey industry, I guess, but in many industries, that we try and make everything done as traditional as possible, from sort of all the floor maltings all the way through to all the bottlings. Sort of everything in between is done in Campbeltown as well. And what that means is that we need to employ people, and that's sort of the main idea. So I think we're up to over 80 full-time members of staff as well, and they're all based in Campbeltown. The way I look at it is that if we're based in Campbeltown and we collect our wage at the end of the month, where do we spend it? We spend it in Campbeltown. So that's the way I look at it, and that's I mean, I think it's something to be admired, that a distillery that's so well known, so popular around the world, that it has been able to maintain this sort of ethos in the way that we do things. And
I find that very, very intriguing and impressive. I actually could get a little teary-eyed thinking about it in some ways.
Yeah.
The
Don't cry now, though. It'd be really awkward.
The guys haven't seen me cry yet.
Yet being the word.
Yes, but there's something that I've used long time for work and whatnot, and it's actually a quote from Dale Carnegie, who was American Steel here. But he says, "If you take away my people, my factories will crumble. If you take away my factories but keep my people, let me keep my people, I will build new, better factories."
Yeah.
Right. So I really am impressed by that.
It's the sort of thing that there would be no way of knowing, but I would imagine that Springbank wouldn't taste the same if we did it differently. If we sort of got in the barley and we sort of all the casks say were matured in sort of the lowlands, the central belt of Scotland. So I believe that it would taste differently and there'd be a different effect.
And so the owner has, I mean, he has no plans on selling this or becoming anything. I mean, did he not buy like a economy car to drive around in? It's a rumor or something I've read about.
Yeah.
He bought a Kia. I
mean, I'd say Mr. Wright he's not he doesn't go about shelling money about and frivolous things and stuff. It's sort of, I mean, he runs the company the way that his father told him, and so on and so forth. So the ethos of it is maintained, and I don't know what car he's driving today, or if he's driving a car today or not.
Yeah, I
think it was the Kia. He drives a Kia, a small little
Kia, and it's something. What I read, it was because it had the best warranty. It was like 10 years or something. Yeah, he's like, this is all I need. And really, having been to Scotland, you wouldn't need the things that we drive around here. I mean, the people that had some bigger cars had to. I can see why you would not need something that big, and
especially if you're in Campbeltown quite a lot. There's no
you can walk almost.
There's no real need for a car. Never mind a big jacked up truck or anything like that. So.
Guys, we went to 2 distilleries in a 5-minute walk, right? So, and then we went to Caden's Heads.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, that was only a little bit more, maybe 5 minutes or whatever, while I was following behind Melanie, and she can walk fast. Maybe it was because I had a few whiskeys in me from your warehouse.
You were probably maybe more staggering than walking.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah, Campbeltown's a small town, so it's easy to get about to the 3 distilleries and the Cadenheads as well. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we have in here Hoagie Bear. Springbank usually has very good intrinsic quality. The only downer for me is that their style is very distinct and not something I can enjoy all too often. Okay, winter spice is his question mark.
Yeah. Well, it's the Springbank's very unique.
Yeah.
Not to downplay other distilleries, but it's sort of, there's distilleries that you would say taste like one another, and then they've got similar sort of qualities and stuff. And to me, especially Springbank in general, it's got a very distinctive and unique characteristic to it that you can't really compare it to other distilleries, which both is a good thing, but if you don't like it, there's not a sort of go-between. And it's because of the way we do things and sort of as traditional as possible, and we don't chill filter or add any colour and anything.
No.
Every bottling, there can be differences depending on the cask that we used and everything like that.
Right.
So we enjoy and we thrive on the uniqueness from bottle to bottle, because often we'll get asked, I tried this Springbank 10 and then I tried another one and it tasted different.
Right.
Sort of go, yeah, that's what we're going for. So I do understand the argument of sort of wanting the sort of similarity in every sort of bottling, because if you say you're in Edmonton and then you go to Sydney and you want to try the exact same whiskey, there's only a few that you can actually try, and I sort of understand that, but it's the uniqueness that we really thrive off of.
So one of the things that I noticed there was when Melanie first took us into your malting floor.
Yes.
You had two different types of rakes, a manual and a power rake.
Yeah.
And she said, I forget the gentleman's name now, but it depended on, and he would have them use both.
Yeah.
And is there a reason?
I think the reason we use both, well, the one that you can sort of visibly see if you see them working at different times, is the electric one creates a whole load of mess.
Yeah.
I mean, it throws the barley about and it turns all and everything, but it creates a lot of mess. Where the grubber in itself, which is the old-fashioned sort of rake, like it's very neat and tidy. It's a little bit more harder work.
When we were there, it was like a blanket, perfectly laid. Edges were nice, everything, right?
Yeah, you've got to keep the place looking nice and tidy.
Well, you know what? For very, very old. I mean, it's old, and I've been a bricklayer for years, and I could stand there and look at all the brickwork on the outside of the buildings. And even as we walked to Kilkerran, you have all the freestanding walls that have something that used to be
old
there.
warehouses and stuff that have fallen down. Yeah,
it's just a phenomenal place. You could spend quite a bit of time just on the outside, let alone going inside.
And it's something I find quite interesting is about the sort of round Campbeltown and the types of stone that were used to build the warehouses and the distilleries. You can sort of see buildings that were built at the time of Campbeltown and its sort of whiskey heyday, because I think sort of the ships that would come in to pick up the casks would then offload all the stones and bricks and stuff to balance out the ship. Yeah. So then they'd use that to build things, and that usually had something to do with the whiskey industry. So all awesome. The warehouses and the distilleries that used to stand, and there's old walls that you can see, have all got similar type of mishmashing of bricks and stones because they were built during that era. Yeah. So you can sort of pick out buildings that were built at the same time that the whiskey industry was booming in Campbeltown.
That's awesome. Back to the inside the malting floor. I think that she took us over to the big, what do you call it?
Steep.
The big steep.
Yeah.
And explained to us that the guys actually put like rubber pants on or whatever and get right in there.
Right in there and shovel it out. I mean, it's hard work. It's a lot more hard work than I do day to day.
Yeah.
But yeah, they get in there and they shovel it out into wheelbarrows and then put it out
spread it out on the floor.
Tip the wheelbarrow out and then spread it out all nice and even. Okay. So it sort of germinates at the same time.
That's awesome. It was, and the aroma in there. So visiting wise, guys, we went to 7 different distilleries. Springbank and Campbeltown was genuinely had the most historical feel. Everywhere else that we went to, they talked about historical things. Mm-hmm. They're like, oh, we've been making spirit here way back for whatever.
Yeah. And
sure they were, but I mean, now you're in a new facility and they're in new areas. It's different. Not really taken away so much from the other ones, but Campbeltown has this. It's just built right in there. You know, I don't know the actual words to really use, but you are in.
It's a working museum, almost like.
That's literally what you should say. So you have these expressions I have in front of us here. Mm-hmm. Hazelburn. We'll start with this one because I really have only had tastings of Hazelburn. So this was, and I won't leave that up there because the camera will focus on us and make us look fuzzy. I just got that pointed out. That's why I moved the chunk. It made us look fuzzy. Hazelburn is supposedly not peated.
Yes.
But you had an interesting example where you finished telling some people that it wasn't, and then?
So the story is I was doing a tasting, I think it was in Belgium, and telling people how Hazelburn's not peated, and it's not peated at all, but then you taste it and it was you just got this peated aroma from the whiskey itself. And these things sometimes happen because it's all the same equipment and everything, and sometimes casks can get mismanaged and put in. And these things happen, but it's the sort of the joys of working for a family sort of community-run distillery that
That's what makes
machines don't usually make mistakes, but
Right.
people do. But it's the sort of the joys and the good fun of it all.
But that adds the uniqueness to it. I think that's
Yeah.
great. I mean, we can get, and for the lack of a better word, sterile whiskey where every bottle tastes the same. I agree. And I like the fact that I'm not sure where things are going. If we take a look at here, and we probably should have a breakfast dram, right?
Yeah. Why not?
So we have the new Springbank 15.
Yeah.
And we have a bottle I brought that's an older release.
The
Do you
older
recognize
Yeah.
how old it is?
There's essentially no difference between the two bottlings. It's just different labels,
Just different labels.
different packaging. Yeah.
You think they taste the same?
I wouldn't say they tasted the exact same, but they're both 100% Oloroso sherry. So,
And they're
Similar.
both, for non-chill filtered, they're both very close in color.
yeah.
So there is something about consistency
Yeah.
in the fact that you have the same people and they all work together
Yeah.
to make something, right?
Yeah.
But maybe I brought this from my trip, and this is a bottle. Hopefully it will clear up on the camera. That I bought in the Caden house is from what they would call it
It's a
a living.
living sort of live cask.
Yeah.
Sort of bottles are sort of poured in and it's filled up every so often, and it's sort of you can go in and buy different size bottles and stuff, and it's non-age and it's only got an ABV to it because it is a sort of a marrying of different cask types, different strengths, different ages, and everything.
Would you like this as a breakfast dram?
Yeah, go for it.
Would you?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I should put yours in this size glass because that's what we got.
Yeah.
I thought, why do you give me such a small glass?
Yeah.
I think maybe that was
Just don't want to give the whiskey away for free. That's all.
yeah. That's it. We have one question here from Santa. Ask if there will ever be older cask strength Springbank. So we have the 12-year-old here.
Yeah.
Is there an older one planned, or you don't know?
Planned, no, in a word. But you never know. Things always change. I know. Thank you very much. I know previously we've done 21-year-old Springbanks that were done at cask strength and stuff, but not to my knowledge. But it's the sort of thing that these things can always change with Springbank. There's not although we try to have a set sort of schedule and releases and stuff, sometimes these things change.
But you're not having. So you keep your casks. You don't send them out. They're not being sold. I can't walk in through.
You can't walk in and buy a cask.
Buy a cask.
No, we stopped selling casks privately in the early 2000s. Same last night at the tasting is because we don't have the stock to sell. We don't sell any blenders or independent bottlers. And we don't sell privately because we make such a small amount that it would be. We wouldn't have any to release a Springbank if we didn't have it, if we sold it privately. So
I appreciate that. I like that. Now I like independent bottlers.
Yeah.
And I would love to find one, but having been there and seeing how you guys make things, I don't think that per se, my personal opinion, that I would get something different from an independent Springbank.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're with some other companies, you really get to see what their potential from an independent bottler.
Yeah.
Is what I would feel that way. This here is probably now, with my experience having been there and listening to yourself, it's given me a totally different perspective of whiskey. So what do you think of this? I poured this myself.
Cheers.
Cheers.
That's lovely. Nice
So-
and creamy.
So this is not called. This is called.
It's not technically whiskey in the sense that it's. I was saying earlier, I'm not sure whether it's plain British spirit or pure British spirit, but it's. You can't sort of have say a living cask, and there's some rules and regulations that you can't call it Scotch whiskey or something. I tend to stay out of that argument, understanding it all, but it's double distilled PBS from Glengyle Distillery, so it's essentially just cocaine, but without calling it cocaine and whiskey.
Yes, it was, I believe. I do have a picture of the cask I got it out of, guys, but I didn't actually be able to find it at the same time. Thank you for coming in, Pat, and I hope you enjoy watching the replay. Do each of the three brands use the same cuts? He asked.
No.
No. Matter of fact, sorry about that. We had so you run Springbank.
Yes.
Kilkerran doesn't run at the same time, but they are totally separate.
Yes, two different distilleries that's run by the same sort of, say, take 6 members of staff. Kilkerran or Glengyle last year, Kilkerran single malt whiskey, ran for 3 months in 2018, which I think is the longest time that it's ran for.
Yeah.
So what basically happens is that all the malting happens at Springbank, and then it's taken up, and then we start sort of the rest of the process at Glengyle, and then produce Kilkerran. So basically, we stop distilling at Springbank Distillery and move and produce Kilkerran.
Okay.
But Glengyle's a relatively new distillery in sort of the grand scheme of the whiskey industry.
Yeah.
Started producing in 2004. So it's slowly moved up. It used to be as short as 6 weeks that we used to be open for. So slowly sort of getting, as the whiskey grows older, we have more and more releases and such, that the plan is that hopefully the distillery is running for a longer period of time.
And relatively new, but when you go into it,
yes,
the spirit safe and the equipment is not brand new, spanking polished stuff.
No, it's all, majority of it's sort of second hand and acquired from different places. It was Frank McCarty who was sort of tasked to build this distillery, and he sort of used his contacts within the whiskey industry, sort of pieced together
But to me, that makes it very unique and very it was still historical, and
it is in the old buildings of the distillery. Whether that, like, sort of where the stills are sitting now, whether that's where the stills were before, I don't know. The chances are not, but it's in the building, the old building of Glengyle Distillery that used to be there. So it's in the building of an old distillery, but it's started introducing again in 2004, and it's the sort of thing, we make no claims that this is
but I thought it was very, very,
some people tend to do that,
thrifty or whatever, because I mean, it's still, the Kilkerran makes a phenomenal,
it's an unbelievable whiskey.
It's unbelievable.
One of my favorites.
It was probably one of the favorites from the tasting yesterday, especially the cask strength. And I liked your perspective on cask strength, that it allows us to work with it and manipulate it.
It just gives that. I mean, I buy and drink whiskey. I like to have the freedom as well. That, you add water in if you want, and then sometimes some whiskies served at 46%, like a lot of our range, but you don't need to add water. But you still have the freedom to add water in as well if you want. And then we don't chill filter and add colour, but if you really want to add that to your whiskey as well, you've got the freedom to do that.
The freedom to do it.
But if you're wanting to add colour into your whiskey in the glass, that's up to you.
I'm glad you brought up the ABV, because that was one thing that caught my attention with the main lineup here of your 10-year-old, which, you know what, guys? I had this said to me in one of the local stores here. He says that everybody should have a 10-year-old Springbank in their cabinet.
That's sound advice.
I agree, actually. And trying it yesterday, I would agree, because we tried it and then we followed through with your main core range, right? But they're all 46%.
Yes.
And I forgot the little note I wrote of what you said, but you do it a certain way for specific reasons. Yeah,
the sort of marrying of the casks together. So all the casks are into the vat and they marry together, and then they're reduced from whatever the cask strength is after the vatting down to 50.5, which is the sort of marrying strength. And then they go back in the casks and they sit till we're then ready to be bottled. And then we reduce it to 46%. Able to do that because all the casks are in Campbeltown and we have our own bottling hall and we've got the facilities to do that. So it gives us the sort of freedom to be able to do that. But I don't know if that happens too often when you outsource the bottling, but it gives us that freedom to sort of drip the whiskey in like you would if it was in your glass. Is the way I look at it, is that if you add a whole load of water to the whiskey in your glass at one time, you've completely drenched and drowned the whiskey. But if you add it in little stages, then you're not hiding, you're not masking any, and you're sort of easing it in nice and gently. So that's what we do. We're reducing it to 50.5 and then down to 46. It's
when you said that part about it that I actually, because when you introduced us to the 10-year-old, you know, that it would, the flavor profile we would be able to tell as we went along. And I think that might be part of the I mean, because of the 10-year-old said last night, the tasting, the 10-year-old is a great introduction to the distillery. So it tells you everything that you need to know about what to expect in other releases, and then everything's a sort of
a variation off of that. If you would, either there's more sherry or more bourbon, or it's all sherry or all bourbon. So it sort of goes away from that. But as an introduction, and you would say entry level whiskey into Springbank Distillery, it sort of tells you everything you need to know.
Right. Yeah. I'm trying to see if I'm missing somebody. Says I have a 13-year-old cask strength independent Springbank in fresh port pipe. So if they have that, they never bought that bottling or barrel from Springbank. They would have it. It
would depend who it was, I guess. It could be a Cadenhead one, but I don't know if they've ever done that.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But they could have, cask could have been purchased pre-2001 and sold on, or
something
so
like
on.
Yeah. There's a lot of misconceived stuff like that. I've asked another, George S. Grant.
Yeah.
And he blatantly said, we have never sold a cask to anybody.
Yeah.
But that may mean, to him, it may mean that it's come from a broker or something.
Yeah, it's been sold to someone, and then someone may have sold it on.
And it may be, you never know when they got that cask and so forth.
Yeah.
I being a fan of independent bottlers, I've learned a little bit about how some of the terminology and stuff has changed and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Which is another thing I like about Springbank, is that there's not a lot of over fancy words. It's not limited. It's not,
Yeah.
And you brought up something about batches, and that you technically don't.
We don't tend to bother with batches. I know the 12-year-old that's at the front there, a lot of people sort of monitor what batch we're on. We have sort of 2 releases a year, and they sort of keep up to date on what batch and everything like that. But that's not something that we really keep an eye on, because it's.
They've been.
It's similar, it's the same as it could be, really.
But ultimately, guys, all whiskey is rare. All of it. The barley's change, the oak changes, the weather changes when you're making it. There's lots of things. Change, and they try to make it. Many of these companies try to make it, but it's just not plausible. And
it's very difficult to get them the exact same, especially bottling so far apart. By the time I get tired.
Do you have all the time?
Yeah. They document it up to them. People writing notes down. Festival. So imagine.
I better start taking notes.
Yeah,
right.
You can't remember anymore.
Or stop swallowing. One or the other. So the difference with here, we had something mentioned. So Longrow is your heaviest.
It's our heaviliest peated from Springbank Distillery,
right?
In the sense that Springbank's low teens ppm, and then Longrow's 45 to 50 ppm. Right. So it's a heavily peated for Springbank Distillery, but if you compare it to other other peated whiskies, for instance, from Islay, you notice there's a big difference in the peat itself.
Well, the unique thing,
flavors you get from it,
and back to maybe the original part that I asked about the ABV,
yeah,
is that a lot of times I get stuff peated from other regions or other areas, and that's, you just get hit either right on the nose by peat, or right on a palate by peat. Here, especially with the ones that were either all bourbon, or the ones that were sherry influenced, there's some reason all of them seem to be much more balanced to me. Right?
I would put it down to sort of the way that we make it generally. I mean, we have really long fermentation times at Springbank, around about 110 hours. So you automatically have this fruity wash. So after sort of distillation and everything, it's predominantly a fruity spirit. So it generally is quite a well-balanced whiskey, and it's not overpowering in smokiness, but with Springbank in general, it's a very lightly peated whiskey anyway. And then especially when you start looking at sort of like the 18, 21, 25, and the peated levels that you can actually taste have died down because of the age, then you're getting a really sort of lowly peated level within the whiskey, even although it's still sort of low teens ppm.
Somebody said technical difficulties. Is it better now? Is there any problem there? Somebody said technical difficulties, but everything seems to be working fine on my side. Somebody make a comment in the chat there, guys. Never know, the Wi-Fi, maybe. So we tried one. Am I allowed to bring that up? So we tried one at the end. It was written down as a secret dram.
Yeah.
And it's Alberta exclusive. And it is a...
This is Longrow Chardonnay.
Longrow Chardonnay.
Yeah.
And we don't know everything about it, but it'll be a cask strength. And it'll be about 14 or 17 years old. We're done. Yeah.
I think so.
I know that was a kind of a surprise to you as well.
It's a surprise to me as well. It's the first time I've ever tasted it, so it was a surprise to me. So I've absolutely no information on that whiskey.
See, this is the best part, eh? When you see that he has a job to do as well, but you can't know everything, and you got a lot going on.
No, that's why I pride myself in the fact that I don't know everything.
Yeah.
I make a habit of telling people that as well.
Well, that might be. Is there any liability reasons for that too? Or?
No. I just tend to try and not know things. If you don't know things, you can never get caught with them. That
is awesome. One of the funnest things we had on the tour was we get to actually go to the spirit safe, and it wasn't locked. It wasn't running.
It's locked most of the time.
Yes, it is. Apparently, you had to share the lock with Kilkerran.
We've only got one lock for the two spirit safes.
Yeah, so
we magically went missing as well. I think. Especially if the spirit safe's not running or anything.
It's not.
I can't imagine there's an issue with it, but
I don't think there is. No, it was very interesting and unique because everywhere else it was locked up and so on. But actually, I think it was locked up in Kilkerran. So you were sharing that. Anything I'm missing? Oh, you know what? Here's an interesting thing I like that you brought up. Dave brought this back. Now, this is your dry peat.
Yes.
We would assume.
Yes.
The interesting thing is that people like to smell stuff. I'm smelling this right now, and I smell no peat.
Yeah.
And it is a common thing.
And it's a very common thing for
people
to smell peat. It's one of the small joys that you get out of doing a tour. And it has people is sort of picking up the peat, which I like to do, and having a good whiff of it, and then telling them that it's essentially just dirt that you've been sniffing.
This is a good sized chunk, and he didn't get questioned in customs one bit about this chunk of dirt. Ultimately, so what's the difference between this and it's a redundant question, and the wet peat? Does the wet peat come from the same area, and it's just?
Do you want a Scottish answer to that one?
Yeah, I do actually. Are you ready?
The wet peat sits outside and it rains in Scotland. Yes. And the dry peat's under a roof, so it's not.
So it's allowed to dry. Yes.
It's as far as I'm aware that the peat comes.
They come from the same area. It's really about having moisture in it helps you because you like this, and then you
sort of start the fire off. The kiln at Springbank for Springbank Longrow and Kilkerran is you start off with the dry peat. And that gets the fire going because it's dry, obviously, so it burns. And then you sort of control the temperature with the wet peat, but it's also the wet peat that gives off the most smoke and gives you that sort of flavour.
Right.
And that's, you use a combination of both. We do to sort of get the fire going and produce the smoke, which is then rises up into the barley, which is then turned to all the barley gets the same sort of amount in general of the smokiness from the wet peat that comes through.
So we were there when we were there. Melanie took us upstairs, up through. I forget what they're all the areas are called. Yeah. One of the unique things there is seeing like, what do they call your grinder, the grish to grind the barley.
The grist, yeah, the mill.
The mill,
yeah,
is very old.
Yeah, it's probably one of the oldest pieces of equipment. I think it's 1940s. It dates back to.
Yeah,
it's the Porteous malt mill. And
it still works and
yeah, it seems to be doing all right in its old age.
In its old age, does a very, very good job. And then she took us up into the actual drying.
Into the kiln itself.
Into the kiln itself, right? Mm-hmm. It was a unique old metal stairway to get up into it.
Yeah.
And to get inside. And I guess you guys have had tastings in there or dinners.
Yeah, we've done. What we tend to do is the Campbeltown Malts Festival.
Yeah.
And it's sort of it's the week before Isla, and it's sort of it now runs sort of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, going from the gin distillery that's in Torresdale just outside Campbeltown, and then it goes to Scotia on the Wednesday, and then Springbank we have a dinner on the Wednesday evening, and we tend to sort of, because we tend to put it into different parts of the distillery, basically to showcase really the different aspects and the different parts of the job. So we've had it, say, in the bottling hall, the upstairs in the bottling hall, and we've had it in the kiln before. And it's not a big area and quite dark, but we have a kiln, so we can sort of use that.
I think it was very it was dark to get in there. I mean, your eyes adjusted because we come from a lit area to get inside, right? A lot of us were turning on our cell phone flashlights, but and a lot of times I think the one she was talking about was a fundraiser for something in the Campbelltown. No,
that was before I started.
Before you started, maybe that might have been.
Yeah.
So that's done quite often, eh?
So every year we have the Campbeltown Malts Festival, and it's sort of getting bigger.
Is that where you turn the malting floor into a market as well, or is that a different?
The malting floor gets turned into a market fairly often for sort of Christmas markets and stuff. If it's fingers crossed, for the past 2 years we've had really, really sort of unbelievable weather during the malts festival. Unbelievable weather in Scotland, being it's not raining. So we've been outside. But if it starts raining and stuff, we move everything inside into the malt floor, and it's a good area to sort of have people in. But generally, usually with the malts festival, the tastings will happen in the malt barns.
Is it?
And then it turns into a ceilidh in the evening. But that's where we usually have the tastings.
And you have how many warehouses? Because I showed you a picture, and without even seeing it, you knew that I was in warehouse number 3.
Yeah.
And so are they distinctly?
Usually just my answer to most things. Oh, it's in warehouse number 3.
Looks just like number 3.
Yeah, with a combination of racked and sort of dunnage warehouses, and they are very distinctive.
They were the most distinct out of every. We went to 7 distilleries, and it was the most distinct.
Going into the Dunnage style warehouses, it's an experience because it's its own climate in itself within there, and there's sort of mold everywhere, and it's quite damp and cold, even if it's warm outside. And there's a lot of alcohol sort of in the air, but it's
well, that's the aroma. That's what first got me compared to the other ones. Is the aroma in there was,
I think, the
pungent. It was
having that
beautiful
aromas from saying like going into the kiln and smelling sort of the toasted barley, or the steep where you've got the wet barley and smelling it, and then going into the warehouse, it sort of adds a different sort of aspect, a different dimension to the tour itself. And okay, you're seeing these points around the distillery, but to sort of see it, hear it, and then smell it as well, it sort of adds to the whole sort of experience. And we're lucky that we're able to sort of just wander in and show you, maybe pull a few samples from the cask or whatever, and all that sort of stuff. So
it was, matter of fact, it was very unique to see the stuff get pulled out. And to try stuff right out of the cask, guys, is you got to go and try it. It's totally different than going to a store, obviously, and buying a bottle and just sitting back and imagining it. You go there, and then after that, everything you will try will bring memories to you, in my opinion.
Well, whiskey's it's a very emotional drink, in the sense it's all about experience and everything that's happening around it, and you can appreciate one whiskey in a certain environment, but then not in the other. So I think in a damp, dark, musty warehouse, there is an experience that it adds to the actual tasting of the whiskey. So it can give you a sort of a different emotion when you taste that whiskey.
Absolutely, yeah. So there's one more thing, and we're gonna let Ronan go here soon. There's quite a bit different, and I used the word co-opetition yesterday.
Yeah.
With the way the whiskey community all over Scotland seems to work. They're not really trying to damage the other.
We're not really
promoting each other.
Yeah, but it's an industry, and sort of, I guess we're in competition with everyone, but that's like saying that Springbank's in competition with Macallan. There's no real way to say that we are.
Yeah.
But in terms of competition, it's not really a thing. I mean, we're all good friends, and we travel around the world together. And
well, I found an article that I found interesting about how people from Springbank went and helped and worked with another Campbeltown distillery to help them get.
It's not something I know the full sort of ins and outs of, but it's something that I know that members of staff went over and helped Glen Scotia
and worked with them
and it's the sort of thing that a story like that sort of epitomizes what the whole company Janie Mitchell is about. Yes, people might come to Campbeltown to see Glen Scotia and not visit Springbank, but they sort of spend their money in Campbeltown, and it adds into the economy. All going around in Campbeltown, and it's something that is a distillery and working for the distilleries and stuff that's you can be very proud of, to be able to go, we're in competition with Glen Scotia, but in fairness, if it brings more people to Campbeltown to spend their money and sort of stay there and do the tours and everything, then it's fine. It's far away from Glasgow. You might be able to see on the map. It's not the easiest of places to get to, so the more reason for people to actually come to Campbeltown and sample the whiskies, and it's a good thing. So. It
was very, very. I'm glad we went there. I have no thing that I would, or anything that I would say negative about this trip, really, other than feeling maybe a little rushed in the beginning, because as Ronan just said, we had to do some traveling to get, because we went to the Isle of Arran first, and then we had to come back up and come back down. But even then, that to see the scenery and be able to do those things, it's part of the entire experience. So I recommend it to any one of us. I really appreciate your time.
No, that's no problem.
I don't think we have any questions in here per se. I hope everything worked out. Somebody did say, he says, do we know which stores will be getting the exclusive? Ramrod, no, I do not. Hopefully all of them. Do we have a number of bottles? Do we know if it'll be whatever? But it's an entire cask, so there'll be a few bottles. I mean, they'll be around. If I find out, I will certainly let everybody know, right? Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Do you need a little more here?
Yeah, Scottish, so finished.
Scottish. Well, I probably didn't pour a Scottish sized Dram.
Just a wee one.
Just a wee one.
Thank you
very much. Cheers, and let me get this in the right place so that everybody. Oh, we're in the wrong. I'm new to this YouTube thing, guys. Sorry about that. Wrong one again. There we are. So,
cheers.
What are you smelling at?
Oh, Jesus.
Peat?
There's a little bit of smokiness in there.
Yeah.
Very faint, though, to typical sort of Kilkerran or spirit from Glengyle. It's very softly peated. It's cash strength, but there's a sort of a mixture of many different sort of
I think that
and everything.
It makes it a unique experience being able to have actually poured this myself. So and to bring it all the way back to you. So
I'd say, I could taste this in Campbeltown, but instead I'm tasting it in Newton.
Yeah, there you go. Well, at least it brings some of that.
The good thing about it's very short. The good thing about the living casks and the Cadenhead stores is it because things are constantly being added to it, and it can change and it can develop. So then every time you go back,
it's not the same.
It's not the same one.
Yeah.
Which is sort of people sometimes moan about it, that they went back to get another bottle and it tasted different, and then that's just the sort of luck of the draw, really.
If the only thing I guess I said I could complain about when I was there is that our tour guide was rushing us because we had to get to the ferry, and I didn't have enough time in that Cadenhead store.
Yeah.
So, all right, everybody, thank you very much for coming in, and I really appreciate your time.
That's no problem. Cheers. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you.